At the same time, both theoretically and practically, as difficult as it is, we also need to cultivate the whole thought and practice of identity and ahimsa. And how do we cultivate a path of identity, which is not just a prisoner of logic of violence, but a companion to ahimsa, which also requires a civilizational shift. So now let us invite our dear Deven Bhai, please. So Deven Bhai, please do.
Yeah, thank you. My greetings to all of you, and I'm grateful to Anantagiri for this invitation and giving an opportunity to share from ground zero. Yeah, I would very much agree and believe that the human being have all the potentials to create and discover altogether a new world where the differences will disappear and the common interests, common human good will come out more than the differences. But the problem, as I see in India, India has such a rich cultural traditions and very deep faith traditions also. All of these faith traditions, including Christian, the Hinduism and Jainism, all of these have wonderful ideas of how human beings can all together form one family. That concept. But however, from day one, India became independent. It wanted to develop that society in which all human beings see the commonality, then the differences under this idea of unity and diversity. But almost 75 years down the line, when we started with this idea, we see that India is breaking up more than finding the unity. So the question is, how has India managed its diversity? Diversity and what has been the outcome? The outcome has been more of a divergent than what we desire to reach, the unity. But why has it happened this way? To my understanding, we have good ideas, great ideas, but we do not have the institutions that will deliver that. That's one. Along with the institutions, we also do not have, till date, the government of India has not invested a single paisa in peace building or anything to do with people making peace among themselves or various struggling people making peace with the state. So we have had all kinds of conflict, violent conflict throughout India. It is not a question of Manipur alone, but Manipur, yes, is burning today as never before. But the whole of India has been burning from day one, following, starting with the partition in 1947. And we still continue to burn. And we see at least 3 to 4 kinds of violent conflict that is spread across India. And my own studies tells me and informs me that at least 70% of Indian states are affected with violent conflict of 3 or 4 kinds, and they are the communal violence, which is carried over of the partition. Second is Maoist struggle in the middle of India. Third is ethnic conflict, which is affecting the whole of Northeast. And the fourth is insurgency, which is also affecting Northeast as well as the Jammu and Kashmir part. So if you look at the map of India, these 4 kinds of conflict, you can map it out and see how badly India has been affected by violent conflicts. Today, our focus is on Manipur, and it should be. And try and understand the larger picture from the smaller picture also, how this has come about. Now, if you look at India, India is a country of diversity, and diversity of all kinds again. Racial diversity, if one believes in race, we have we have multiple diversities of culture, language, histories. At least 560 kingdoms were there plus, and that is what makes India. Yeah, despite making all the attempt in the constitutions to delink the history and create a new democratic society, we have failed time and again because of the structural problems, because our electoral political systems promote the differences, promote divisions among people rather than unity. So as long as this electoral system is operating, which ideally should be operating on ideological level, has rather effectively operated on identity, caste, including caste identity. And if you look into the Northeast, there are much more, diversity is much more denser than the rest of India, and how this electoral system, multi-party electoral system can be more devastating than doing any unifying work in the region. Now, if you come to, and when all of these are happening, and all these violent conflicts are actually becoming more and more powerful, intensifying, and every time uh, the government is trying to has tried to address these issues. There has been effort to create more and more states as a negotiated settlement of. So, for example, the latest one is the Bodoland territorial region, autonomous region. Yes. So if you and then if you look at how the world has also moved from the year 2000 by generating all set of new knowledge to make the world more human, more unified as human society, rather than divided as different nations and states and all that. UNESCO has all the resources to make a new world altogether based on the human potentials of loving one another affectionately and also connecting one another rather than fighting on differences. But but nothing of that actually has affected the global change has not affected India, because when at UNESCO there was this effort to move the entire history of violence and war towards culture of peace and non-violence. Only in 2005, the government of India came up with an effort to introduce peace education in the schools, as reflected in the National Curriculum Framework 2005, where it was uh, clearly laid out that peace education should be introduced in the schools. But today, when I did a survey in Northeastern region, in none of the schools in the Northeast, this subject has been introduced. So that is the time lag that India has suffered. As I said earlier, there is no budget for peace, but there is an increasing budget for security sector. And you can imagine how much money has been invested in the Northeast alone in trying to counter the insurgency there, and also keep the region intact, integrated into India. So much of money goes into making the political class happy and comfortable, uh, and not to join, like not to be diverted to any other divergent political inclinations. And so much has been, but as I said, but there is not a single paisa for building peace, or a list about making institutions for peace. But if you look at other countries in the world which has experienced internal armed conflict, like for instance, the nearest one is Nepal. Nepal, after having experienced Maoist armed revolution for just 30 years, they came up with institutional response to, create one whole department called Peace and Justice. And this department, with all the professional, specially trained people, are working to make a new Nepal. leaving behind a history of war and violence within the country. But if you come back to Manipur, Manipur is again hugely diverse state. It existed before India came into being. It also laid a foundation for to move from monarchy to democratic society a little ahead of India in 1948. 18th October 1948, it inaugurated its elected assembly with a constitution written by the people themselves. In 1949, it got merged in a very controversial manner. And so therefore, one half of the population happy with the merger, second half of the population is unhappy, discontented, and they have a lot of resentment. And so by 1970s and 80s, they begin to pick up arms. I'm keeping aside the Naga history in our neighborhood, but now the focus is with Manipur. Now, in all of these years, because I've been in NGO sector working for, working amidst the ethnic conflict in the Northeast for relief, rehabilitation, reconstruction work and all that since 1994. 1994 is the year when Naga-Kuki conflict went to the peak of its violent intensity. So we were working with the victims of Nagas and Kukis for relief and rehabilitation. And all of this money that come into relief and rehabilitation, peace initiative, all of these are foreign money through NGOs. And this went on till 1990, till 2000, when the government got changed from Congress to the NDA one. When this was taking place, the Intelligence Bureau came up with a whole list of international donor agencies which were funding NGOs for peace and human rights and all of that. And all of these were stopped. No funds were then made available. The NGOs were making peace at the community level. So what I'm trying to say is India does not have an institution for peace building. It doesn't have money. When humanitarian aid agency across the world, in all their humanitarian concerns, wanted to help the people of India who are affected by violent conflict, then India government has a problem with them. So you clip them, you stop all those money. So now we're in a situation where there is no foreign money coming in for peace building. India does not recognize that, is not happy with that, does not like it, and nor India has any single paisa for peace work. So that's tragedy that we have. So therefore, you can only have states after states burning in either in violent conflict, and each and every identity group trying to create their political space, territorial space. Now, if you look into Manipur, the situation in Manipur, it is not Manipur situation per se. I'll give you two perspectives, in fact, three perspectives to understand what is happening there. Before I do so, another pattern that we must understand is that as I have worked with the conflict situation in the Northeast for over 25 to 30 years, what I also see as a pattern is that whenever there is a conflict, whether it is insurgency or it is ethnic conflict, horizontal or vertical, the government like the conflicting party in a bilateral talks, they will never bring the parties together over a single table. That's one. Second thing is they have never promoted, they have never invested a single paisa for the community who are affected by the violent conflict to get into dialogue. I have never seen any such initiative from the government of India. All this while, over the last 40 years, I've seen as I grew up. Government would always engage the top armed group leaders in a bilateral peace talk. They would never promote any horizontal people-to-people dialogue, and nor does government of India have any professional dialogue facilitator so far. It is either a political leader or a bureaucrat trying to negotiate peace with the top level leaders. So therefore, whatever solution comes up doesn't actually percolate down to the people level. Many people do not know what agreements have been made and all of that, because most of these peace talks at the top level often are very secretive. So people do not fully well know what has been agreed and how it is to be implemented, and who is getting benefited from all of that. So people are not involved actually. So when people are not involved, it is easy to create another conflict because of the diversity of multiple identities and ethnic identities that we have. It is very easy for any group to have conflict with the other, and the whole effort has been to highlight or promote the differences rather than the commonality. And that's how the whole system works, whether it is political systems, electoral systems, or whatever systems you talk about. So that's a tragedy. That's why we have more violent conflicts than peace. Peace is a far distance dream for us, as long as we do not have institutions and the investment, financial investment to create peace. I mean, to develop human resources for peace work or peacemaking or peace building work. Now let's get into the Manipur. Three perspectives I'd like to share quickly. The first perspective is much larger perspective, which covers the entire Northeastern region. If you remember 1993, the government of India came up with look-east policy, and two objectives that is very critical, for which you see the outcome now in Manipur happening, is this objective. The first objective says end insurgency in Northeast. Second objective is about opening the region by constructing transocean railways and highways, connecting that with the Southeast Asian market for India's economic development, which is what exactly is happening. 2014, that look-east policy has become even more aggressive when it was announced, renamed as Act-East policy. So it became even more aggressive. And you see the conflict that is happening in Manipur is happening when it became more aggressive. The look-east policy implementation on the ground. Now I'd like to present you three perspectives. The first perspective is cultural, which is also political. Now, Manipur is all about today, not earlier. If we were to talk about Manipur maybe 30 or 20 years from now, then I would have spoken in much different way. But today I'm talking about Manipur is of three people who are very well politically organized based on identity. One is Naga, second is Kuki, and third is Meitei. And these three group of people have very different worldviews. So you can look at the conflict in Manipur as worldview conflicts. Let me explain this. How do Nagas look at now? All this conflict is also about territory and land, which is closely connected with the identity. Now, if you look at the Naga, which occupies, like about 70 to 80% of the hill areas, and Kuki 40 to 50, say 30 to 40% of the hill areas, and Meitei in that small little central valley, which makes about 8% of the total area of the state. And Nagas have people who we know as Naga today. The whole title, the very name Naga itself is actually a political title or political party name. Let's understand that way. But if you look into it, then you will see several tribes. Like in Manipur, we have about 14, 15 tribes, which comes under the banner Naga. Each of these tribes have their own language. They have different linguistic identities, but they do also have some common cultural threads, which brings them together as Naga. So they are very well politically mobilized, and then they have very strong armed group known as NSC and IM, which is leading the whole community towards their political goal. On the other side is the Kuki, who also occupy the hill area traditionally, and the Kukis and the Kukis are also it's a whole set of different kinds of people again. But the only difference is that they have more of a common language than differences. So one people can communicate with several other slightly different sections of Pukichin people in one language. So link language is much more than on the other side with the Nagas. Now, Meitei in between, who are the indigenous people of the valley people, undisputably, have have been a kind of a dominant and majority community historically, because it is around these people the state was formed, the native state was formed, pre-existing state was formed, and it existed as early as 33 AD through a series of kings who have ruled. And so they have their own worldviews about how they look at Manipur and its territory, hill and valley together. They don't see any difference between hill and valley when Meitei looks at it. Now I'm coming to the cultural viewpoint or the worldview of the Meiteis. Now Meitei's life, their worldview is incomplete without the hill surrounding the valley. And their idea of looking at the boundary is very different from that of Nagas and Kukis, because when Meitei as a kingdom, since they have ruled this region for quite long, many years, they had gone beyond their political boundary, cultural and political boundary to fight wars with Myanmar people on the eastern side. They have also had some like some sometimes good relations and bad relations with the Assamese king on this side. And they also have some kind of international relation with the Tripuris in the western side. They have also had some kind of a relationship, good and bad, with the Chinese. So these are all there in our in the written history of Manipur. So their idea of boundary or their political boundary is something that is never fixed. That is, like when the king is very powerful, it is expanding to any distance, and when the king's power is weak, then it is contracting. But the contraction of its boundary is limited to the hills that surrounds Manipur today, because this hill that surrounds the valley today is also the cultural map or the cultural geography of the Meitei, because Meitei's life is never complete unless he goes to one of these hills where their ancestral god and goddesses are there. So every year they go there on a pilgrimage, pay respect to their god and goddesses, and then that's how the cultural life goes on. So for Meitei, separating the valley hills from the valley is like cutting a part of your body, your spirituality, and the whole lot of disturbances, whole life cycle and spirituality also. Because many of these god and goddesses are there in the hills, and the Meiteis themselves, trace their origin from the hills, because Meitei happens to be one of those tribe who, came down to the valley for the first time. And then many other tribes, and they fought one another, and then they mix around. Meitei is not a, pure blood group. It is not a single gene pool, but it's a mix of all kinds of tribe and languages and all of that. It's a very mixed. It is a very syncretic and hybrid population, and also syncretic culture. Yeah, Meitei has whatever culture Meitei has is a composite culture, because it has taken so many things from the surrounding hills, and also all kinds of migration that has taken place from India. That's how Meitei becomes Hindu today. Cultural influences from the Bengal, as early as 14, 15th century onwards, when the Bengal Hindu Vaishnavism influences begin to affect Manipur. And so now we have a very syncretic culture. We still continue to worship our God and goddesses inside the house, but outside we worship Krishna, Radha Krishna, and all that. So it's a very syncretic culture, a composite culture, which is integrated, all streams of planting. Now let us look at the Kuki. Kuki happens to be, historically, if you look at it, are the latecomers. When Nagas had settled with their territory, when Meiteis had already settled earlier, Nagas also settled with their territory, very well-defined territory. And their territories are fixed in the worldview of Nagas. So they have very intense connections with the land and territory also, much more with the territory. This is something that is non-negotiable to the Mega, but the territory is fixed. But if you look at the Kuki side, Kuki has a cultural tradition by which uh, if you have if any Kuki man has 2 or 3 sons, then their cultural tradition is that each of these sons should have a separate village. The sons cannot live their life in father's village, so they have to find another village, another land to create their village, each of them. So it is considered that each of them are born as a king, is equal, and each of them should have another kingdom or a village. And so therefore you can understand how they conceive the idea of boundary and land. If I have to put my foot into the shoes of the Kuki, I would say I would never see my boundary as Kuki, because the boundary is ever expanding, because every time a son is born, you have to find another village, and you cannot have your village in already pre-existing village. So you have to find a fresh land to create another village. So this is what has really affected the Meitei is a very strict, this cultural map over the valley and on the hill. When Meitei begin to realize that their sacred site has been occupied slowly and gradually by creating one village, another village, now both the Kukis and the Meiteis are both the Kukis and Nagas are also ST, listed under ST. So any piece of land occupied or acquired by the members of ST community are permanent. So no common people can ever access that. So it's a permanently occupied, except for the state. No other people can, restore or take back the land. So that's the law. So therefore, you can imagine that today, Meitei, I also belong to the Meitei family. So Meitei today feel that the situation is their existential crisis now. Their very existence is being threatened, because on one side, you have the Naga people whose dream is to create Nagaland, or a integrated Naga territory, larger territory, under a separate administration, autonomous or independent, whatever is feasible um, with the peace processes with the government of India. So about 70% of the hill area, which also includes sacred sites of the Meitei, is no more accessible because of the political boundary that has been drawn. And this political boundary is drawn over the traditional boundary of the Naga inhabited areas. They have not drawn boundary or overlapping boundaries on others. But if you look at the historical map of Manipur as it is, as you see in the Indian map, that's a historical map, and this historical map is being compromised because of the Naga demand for Naga inhabited areas under one administration. On the other hand, you see the Kuki homeland, demand for Kuki homeland as a late coming people the boundary has always been expanding and eating into the very sensitive cultural zones of the Meitei. That's why the conflict is. To explain why this unprecedented violent conflict has started May 3rd and still continue to be so, continuing more intensely. That's one perspective. Now let me take you to the another perspective, which is where you have to see the whole conflict within the Lucas policy framework. Now let us go back to the objective of end insurgency. Now if you look at the notice again, where are the insurgency? Insurgency are only confined to the Nagas. Naga groups are insurgent group. Since they have been under peace talk over the last 20 plus years, this concept of insurgency is more or less disused, but then they still continue to be insurgency. If they are to break away from the peace processes, then they will continue to be insurgent again. And now the next the group of insurgencies are found among the Meitei people. So there are 3 groups. So Lucas policy 1993, and then India wants to be a 5 trillion community. No, sorry, 5 trillion economy very fast. So therefore, there is an urgency on the part of the government of India to achieve the goal of ending insurgency. So it is within this context, you can see the conflict, the present conflict between Meiteis and Kuki. Kukis are well armed, well trained, and also you also have some kind of agreement signed between the government of India with the Kuki armed groups, numbering around 25 to 30 of them under the banner of KNO and KNF. They all are under some kind of agreement called suspension of operation with the government of India, and they are being supervised by the Assam Rifles. So wherever Kukis are, Assam Rifle will also be there. So in this fight between Meiteis and Naga, Meiteis always feel that because of this SHU agreement that is signed between the Kuki armed groups and Assam Rifle, that government of India through Assam Rifle is supporting or helping the Kuki fight against the Meiteis. So the situation becomes more complicated within this framework, the Lucas policy framework. And on the other side, because Meiteis are facing an unprecedented, never thought over situation like existential crisis, all of those outlawed groups have come out in the open to fight against the Kuki people, and exposing and knowing very well that anytime the security forces see them, they can be shot, killed, and arrested, and whatever they want to do under the prevailing law called Armed Forces Special Power Act, which says that you can arrest, kill, or do anything you want if you suspect that someone has a weapon or is likely to do create some kind of law or order situation. So it is based on this suspicion in your mind, in the mind of the operating group, that you can do anything with the life of other people, labeled as outlaw people. Now you can imagine all these armed groups, they have come out of their hideouts and have openly joined in this fight against the Kuki. And so therefore, you can see how easily the objective of Lucas policy can be achieved now, because it is easy. They are there in the open, so it is easy to get them killed in the hands of the Kuki or arrest them at any point of time, because we have around 60,000 troops already on the ground, which has been requisitioned to control over the situation. Very volatile, very violent situations today. And so this is the situation within that framework, unfortunately, where Meiteis are certainly experiencing existential crisis, and they're fighting perhaps tooth and nail to somehow defend the little space that they have left with, breathing space. And they are fighting very valiantly also, because it's an existential situation for them. On the other side, Nagas are watching out because they feel safe, because the peace process is still going on. Government of India is still talking with the collective leaders of NH and IM. So even when there are, like so many troops, security forces on the ground under the policy called this one, military domination, area domination. Yeah, precisely area domination. There are so many troops there. Nagas don't think that the security forces will attack them because they're under peace processes. But then they are also realizing that all of these things are happening under Lucas policy objectives. So therefore, they are also now cautious about how things are moving on everyday basis. Now the question now let me present you another perspective from citizens' point of view. I consider myself as Indian citizens. And I also know that the central government has a constitutional duty to protect lives and properties of its citizens. And when I look at this situation from a citizen's point of view, I have no more patience to tolerate the fact that this war-like situation where people are just killing one another so brutally, so humiliating one another, as never thought before, has been going on almost 3 months now. And we have been asking the government of India as a responsible citizen to stop the war so that people can talk. And there are so many people from the rest of India I'm connected with, civil society. And it is in this context, I would also mention our friend Anant Giriji, who has been so kind to us. We have met several occasions. You all people are, so ready to help us out, but the war is going on. How can you come there? We cannot guarantee your life when in the battlefield. So the first step to make peace is to stop the war, and government of India has not been listening to it. And it is going to be 3 months now. And so as a citizen, I'm asking, how many more lives do you need to be killed in Manipur, whether it is Kukis or Nagas, or Meitei? How many more lives? Don't you consider us as citizens of India? If you allow this war to go on, it is citizens who are getting killed here. Don't you have any constitutional duty to protect our lives and property? So many houses have been burnt, and there are 60,000 people in relief camps, and women are crying every day. They want to go back to their homes, but it is not practically possible. The war is going on. So my humble appeal to this very well-informed, highly intellectual, and very consensus group of people that I'm interacting to is kindly through your lobby connections and all that, kindly tell the government of India, Union government of India, to stop the war immediately. In fact, I'm on a fast over the last, today is the second day. I started my fast with a group of people in my locality by asking government of India to stop the war immediately, and we said that we will fast until you stop the war. So we're fasting. We're fasting one whole day. We are living on one meal. I will continue to live over one meal until they stop the war. That's our commitment, and that's our demand as a responsible citizens of India. And the Union government of India cannot divert from its constitutional duty. So kindly help us in reaching out this message to the government of India. My appeal is also to the entire opposition party who has been just making the parliament not function for the last 3 days, only demanding discussion on Manipur, but none of them are saying stop the war. What we like as a citizens from this part of India is a cooperation, our voice represented through the opposition party saying at least stop the war. Then we can discuss. Why do you want to discuss when the war is going on? Are you not putting the horse before the cart? If you really want value the life of citizens in this part of India, the first thing as a duty of citizens of India and as a responsible political party at the center, as a national party, is to stop the war first. And then it will create space for all of you from the rest of India to come and help us to initiate dialogue across the divide, in Manipur, and make a sense of what is it, and also achieve. It is only through dialogue that we'll be able to achieve what Father Gurubil has said. The larger humanity, the humanity is broken into pieces, shattered. It is so shattered that it is difficult for us to even restore that. That's the situation on the battlefield here. And like people are really suffering, you see, like through night and day.
Thank
They are
you.
scared of their life, right? So therefore, my humble appeal is kindly prevail over all those influential people in Delhi to first stop the war and then initiate dialogue, not negotiation. Please do not start with negotiation. It will never create peace. Negotiation will never peace. Negotiation should come only after a sustained dialogue by involving all stakeholders across the communities. It has to be an inclusive, sustained dialogue. Only at the end of that, people will find the solution for India's security as well as people's security in this part of India. Nobody, and good for everybody. And that should be the aim of government of India if they really care for the people in this area. And they consider we are also equal, we also have equal right as citizens of India. That's my appeal. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Evan Bhai. And it is such a heart-rendering situation. But at the same time, your deep understanding and helping us to understand is a great contribution. So we are grateful to you, and we hope and pray to be part of this dialogue process and stopping the war and moving for peace. Now, David, please.
Thank you so much.
Devin Bhai, thank you so much. No more war, no more war, no more war.
Thank you.
And to everyone, Vanakam, Salam Alaikum, Jai Bhim, Namaste, Namaskar. Arut Peram Jyoti, Arut Peram Jyoti.